welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Wicked. This is part 1, Munchkinlanders. The Root of Evil. From the crumpled bed, the wife said, "I think today's today. Look how low I've gone." "Today? That would be like you, perverse and inconvenient," said her husband, teasing her, standing at the doorway and looking outward over the lakes, the fields, the forest slopes beyond. He could just make out the chimneys of Rush Margin's breakfast fire smoking. The worst possible moment for my ministry, naturally. The wife yawned. "That's not a lot of choice involved, from what I hear. Your body gets this big and it takes over. If you can't accommodate it, sweetheart, you just get out of its way. It's on a track of its own and nothing stops it now." She pushed herself up, trying to see over the rise of her belly. "I feel like a hostage to myself, or to the baby. Exert some self-control." He came to her side and helped her sit up. "Think of it as spiritual exercise. Custody of the senses, bodily as well as ethical continence." "Self-control," she laughed, inching toward the edge of the bed. "I have no self left. I'm only a host for the parasite. Where's my self anyway? Where'd I leave that tired old thing? Think of me." His tone had changed. He meant this. "Frex," she headed him off. "When the volcano's ready, there's no priest in the world that can pray it quiet." "Well, what would my fellow ministers think?" "They'll get together and say, 'Brother Frexbar, did you allow your wife to deliver your first child when you had a community problem to solve? How inconsiderate of you. It shows a lack of authority. You're fired from this position." She was ripping him out now, for there was no one to fire him. The nearest bishop was too distant to pay attention to the particulars of an unionist cleric in the hinterland. "It's just such terrible timing." "I do think you bear half the blame for the timing," she said. "I mean, after all, Frex, that's how the thinking goes, but I wonder." "You wonder?" She laughed, her head going far back. The line from her ear to the hollow below her throat reminded Frex of an elegant silver ladle. Even in the morning disarray, with a belly like a skull, she was majestically good-looking. Her hair had the bright lacquered look of wet fallen oak leaves in sunlight. He blamed her for being born to privilege and admires her efforts to overcome it. And all while he loved her too. "You mean you wonder if you're the father?" She grabbed the bedstead. Frex took hold of her other arm and hold her upright. "Or do you question the fatherliness of men in general?" She stood, mammoth, and ambulatory island. Moving out the door at a slug's pace, she laughed at such an idea. He could bear her laughing from the outhouse even as he began to dress for the day's battle. Frex combed his beard and oiled his scalp. He fastened a clasp of bone and rawhide at the nape of his neck to keep the hair out of his face, because his expression today had to be readable from a distance. There could be no fuzziness to his meaning. He applied some coal dust to darken his eyebrows, a smear of red wax on his flat cheeks. He shaded his lips. A handsome priest attracted more penitence than a homely one. In the kitchen yard, Melena floated gently, not with normal gravity of pregnancy, but as if inflated. A huge balloon trailed its strings through the dirt. She carried a skillet in one hand and a few eggs and the whiskery tips of autumn leaf chives in the other. She sang to herself, but only in short phrases. Frex wasn't meant to hear her. Her sober gown buttoned tight on the collar, his sandals strapped on over leggings. Frex took from its hiding place, beneath a chest of drawers. The report sent him to his fellow ministry over in the village of 3 dead trees. He hid the brown pages within his sash. He had been keeping them from his wife, afraid she would want to come along, to see the fun, if it was amusing, or to suffer the thrill, if it was terrifying. As Frex breathed deeply, readied his lungs for the day of oratory. Melena dangled a wooden spoon in the skillet and stirred the eggs. The tinkle of cowbells sounded across the lake. She did not listen, or she listened, but to something else, to something inside her. It was a sound without a melody, like dream music, remember for its effect, but not for its harmonic distresses recoveries. She imagined if it was the child inside her humming for happiness. She knew he would be a singing child. Melena heard Frex outside beginning to exemplarize, warming up, calling forth the rolling phrases of his argument, convincing himself again of his righteousness. How did the proverb go? The one that Nanny sing-song to her years ago in the nursery. Born in the morning, woe without warning. Afternoon child, woeful and wild. Born in the evening, woe ends in grieving. Night baby borning, same as morning. But she remembered this as a joke fondly. Woe is the natural end of life, yet we go on having babies. No, said Nanny in an echo in Melena's mind, and editorializing as usual. No, you pretty little pampered hussy. We don't go on having babies. That's quite apparent. We only have babies when we're young enough not to know how grim life turns out. Once we really get the full measure of it, we're slow learners, we women. We dry up and discuss and sensibly halt the production. But men don't dry up, Melena objected. They can father to the death. Ah, we're slow learners, Nanny countered, but they can't learn at all. Breakfast! Melena said, spooning eggs onto a wooden plate. Her son would not be as dull as most men. She would rise up to defy the onward progress of love. It is the time of crisis in our society, recited Frex. For a man who condemned worldly pleasures, he ate with elegance. She loved to watch the arabesque of fingers and two forks. She suggested that beneath his righteous asceticism, he possessed a hidden longing for the easy life. Every day is the crisis, is the great crisis for our society. She was being flip, answering him in turn menus. Dear thick thing, he didn't hear the irony in her voice. We stand at the crossroads. Adultery looms, traditional values in jeopardy, truth under siege, and virtue abandoned. He wasn't talking to her so much as practicing his tirade against the coming spectacle of violence and magic. There was a side to Frex that verged on despair. Unlike most men, he was able to channel it to benefit his life's work. With some difficulty, she set herself down on the bench. Whole choruses were singing wordlessly in her head. Was this meant for every labor and delivery? She would like to ask the noisy local women who have come around the afternoon growling shyly at her condition. But she didn't care. She couldn't jettison her pretty accent, which they found affected, but she could sound ignorant about these basic matters. Frex noticed her silence. You're not angry I'm leaving today? Angry? She raised her eyebrows, as she had never encountered the concept before. History crawls on the peg legs of individual lives, said Frex, and at the same time larger eternal forces coverage. You can't attend to both arenas at once. Our child may not have a small life. Now isn't the time to argue. Do you want me to distract from holy work today? We're facing the presence of real evil in Rush Margins. I couldn't live with myself if I ignored it. He meant this, and for such intensity she had fallen in love with him. But she hated him for it too, of course. Threats come. They'll come again. Her last words on the subject. Your son will only be born once, and this watery upheaval inside is any indication. I think it's today. There will be other children. She turned away so he could not see the rage in her face. But she couldn't sustain her fury at him. Perhaps this was her moral failing. She wasn't given to worrying much about moral failings as a rule. Having a minister as a husband seemed to stir enough religious thought for one couple. She laughed suddenly into silence. Frex nibbled at his meal. It's the devil, said Frex, sighing. The devil is coming. Don't say a thing like that on a day our child is expected. I mean the temptation and rush margins, and you know what I mean, Melena. Words are words, and what's said is said, she answered. I don't require all your attention, Frex, but I do need some of it. She dropped the skillet with a crash on the bench that stood against the cottage wall. Well, and likewise, he said. What do you think I'm up against today? How can I convince my flock to turn away from the razzle-dazzle spectacle of idolatry? I will come back tonight having lost to a smarter attraction. You might achieve a child today. I look forward to the failure still, as he said. He said to look proud. To fail in the cause of a high moral concern was satisfying to him. How could it compare with the flesh, blood, mess, and noise of having a baby? He stood at last to leave. A wind came over the lake now, smudging the topmost reaches of the columns of kitchen smoke. They looked, thought Melena, like funnels of water swirling down drains in narrowing, focusing spirals. Be well, my love, said Frex, although he had his own stern public expression on from forehead to toes. Yes, Melena said. The child punched her deep down, and she had to hurry to the outcast again. Be holy, and I'll be thinking of you, my backbone, my breastplate, and also try not to be killed. The will of the unnamed God, said Frex. My will, too, she said blasphemously. Apply your will to which deserves it, he answered. Now he was the minister, and she the sinner, an arrangement she did not particularly enjoy. Goodbye, she said, and chose the stinking relief of the outhouse overstanding to wave him out of sight as he strode along the road to Rush Margins. Okay, that is the end of that chapter. I will see you later.